The wild gyrations in global markets across asset classes this year have investors questioning the timing of many high-stakes bets just before key geopolitical decisions. Now, Iran has directly criticized U.S. leaders of market price manipulation. The Hormuz disruption has led a general surge in crude prices. However, oil markets in recent days have turned extremely volatile. Headlines of potential de-escalation led by President Trump's remarks have led some relief moves, but Brent crude prices fell nearly 5% on Wednesday to trade around $99 per barrel. This follows again on Tuesday to above $100 after having fallen below that level just a day earlier. According to a Financial Times report, huge bets were placed 15 minutes prior to Trump's post about a potential peace deal. The timing of those bets has raised questions of possible insider knowledge at play here. However, officials deny any wrongdoing, even as these trades generated over $100 million worth of profits in about 20 minutes. Similarly, a seesaw in stocks reflected a more nuanced betting pattern, which was led by geopolitical headlines across markets. This week's trading pattern shows that trend. At 7:04 a.m. ET on Monday, President Trump said the U.S. and Iran have had productive discussions to end the Iran war. By 7:10 a.m. ET, in just 6 minutes, the S&P 500 surged 240 points, adding $2 trillion in market value. Then 27 minutes later, Iran completely denied Trump's claims and said there has been no contact with the U.S. By 8 a.m. ET, the S&P 500 had fallen 120 points, erasing $1 trillion in market cap. Future contracts on Wednesday point to a green open after Wall Street stocks closed the previous session with losses. Separately, reports found that newly created Polymarket accounts have made several high-profit, well-timed bets on geopolitical actions by United States just before they were publicly announced by Donald Trump. Those bets have led to widespread suspicion of insider knowledge. Now, Iran's ceasefire bets are not the first instance of such trades on Polymarket. Trades were placed just before the U.S. struck Iran on February 28th. Earlier in the year, one account created on Polymarket placed bets of the removal of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro just hours before Trump's announcement. The newly created Polymarket accounts have often displayed exclusive behavior. Experts and politicians have raised concern that these trades belong to insiders with connections to top policymakers. Senator Chris Murphy has called for investigations into war profiteering. Reports also noted that Donald Trump Jr. sits on the advisory board of Polymarket's parent company. And to unpack it further, we're being joined on the broadcast by Mark Rolling. He's a geoeconomic and geopolitical strategist and author. Mark, thank you for making time for us. We and our viewers are very curious to make sense of this very interesting pattern, which is emerging from the financial markets, perhaps a little too interesting. Now, there are reports of precisely timed bets on oil futures and war policies in predictive markets with respect to the conflict in West Asia, which are slated to reap traders tens of hundreds of millions in profits. And this is just one example. Now, have these select traders perhaps cracked the code to Trump's unpredictability to make the most of it? Or does this pattern point to something altogether different at play here?
Yeah, I mean, the topic is really interesting, and of course, it's very suspicious that the timing is so close to the PR statement from President Trump. We don't have any hard evidence. We know that President Trump and Team Trump have been too close for comfort with business and have taken advantage of the proximity before. So it could be insider trading. It also could be a coincidence. Lots of money is moved at all times. So perhaps it shouldn't be overplayed in that sense. And lots of people will have been. It was not totally unprepared that there was a war in the Middle East. So you have two different sides. But there is actually, besides coincidence and besides insider misuse, there is also a third alternative, which hasn't been so much talked about. And that's a leak or someone close to the Team Trump orbit figuring out what was going to happen. And that's really hard to prove. And that might, if it would be a sort of a whisper going down the chain to someone close to Team Trump, then it's a criminal act. But if it's someone just figuring it out, then it's not a criminal act. And that's why it's so hard to prove in cases like this. that insider trading has happened. It has been proven several times, and many have been hit with hard penalties when you can establish a link. But it is really difficult to establish a link, especially if, which usually is the case, if you can't prove it, it will be someone possibly just guessing. It could be someone close to the press team or someone like that, even a relative. Could be sort of anyone close to the action in Washington.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned the possibility of a leak here, because it has been argued by many that the key to making these remarkable bets is perhaps advanced knowledge of both the content and the timing of Trump's statements. And this is information which is available in advance only at the heights of decision making in the White House, the Pentagon, and of course the U.S. intelligence apparatus. In fact, Iran has directly criticized the U.S. leaders of market price manipulations. Now, having said that, is the war in West Asia in some ways also becoming a war of market manipulation in your assessment?
Well, absolutely. It's so much money at stake here. And of course, we know that Team Trump, well, everyone actually, are very much driven about the economic impact of the war and of course, oil. So everyone across the world is sort of trying to make money out of this. And we know, for example, if we take former Salman Brothers salesman Michael Lewis and best-selling author, he has been talking about the incentive structure, that it is incorrect. It's not easy to produce an incentive structure, which is good. But he's talked about how short-term the incentive structure is. So you have these minute-by-minute information advantages, and you act on them, even if it sort of destroys, it might destroy the reputation long-term. So there is pros and cons for Team Trump in this. Of course, if there is someone making lots of money on it, you have the obvious advantage. But then again, what speaks against that is that it's not a good signal ahead of the election in November. So even if it's not somebody within the immediate Team Trump orbit, it could be like anyone, a relative to someone on the press team. Even if they're trying to keep this close, it's still lots of people who have to be involved when a big thing like this is going on.
Right, and reports have found that newly created Polymarket accounts have made several high-profit and well-timed bets on U.S. geopolitical actions just before they were publicly announced by Trump. Now, having said that, is it safe to assume that the bets made before Trump's remarks are indeed the best-timed trades of 2026?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's why the regulators are checking this for very good reason. Everyone can see that this is a problematic timing. But then again, we also know that regulators such as CFTC and SEC, CFTC in this case, more involved, we know that they do check this constantly. So anyone, if a proper insider, they would know that this would arouse suspicious activity. So they will have, if it is criminal activity, they will have to establish some sort of a barrier and different layers against this. But of course, the good thing about all this is that it has been spotted and it's now investigated. I guess we just have to see how the investigation plays out.
Absolutely, Mark. And of course, these are just speculations at this point, and we'll have to wait for some hard evidence to reach any conclusion. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your perspective with us.
Pleasure.